I'd ask for a motion to come out of executive session.
I move to come out of executive session, return to regular special session.
I'll second.
Who made the motion? Gosh. Calling for a vote. Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks?
Yes.
Peter Denmark? Monty Irvin?
Yes.
Victor Shen?
Yes. I say yes too.
Oh, and Dan Blair. Sorry about that, Dan.
Okay, another motion. I move to adjust acting city manager Reeves' salary to $9,500 monthly, retroactive to March 5th, until a city manager is found to replace her as acting city manager.
Where's that?
He's just making a motion.
Okay.
Second. I'll second.
Calling for a vote. Dave Pinkish? Oh.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none?
All right. Calling for a vote. Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Peter Denmark?
Yes.
Victor Shen?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks?
Yes.
Monty Irvin?
Yes.
And Dan Blair?
Yes. Madam Clerk, would you read the first ordinance? 01-2018.
Ordinance 01-2018, an ordinance approving Alaska Railroad's request to rezone lots 3 and 5, Block 10 of Whittier Subdivision Phase 2.
I'd ask for a motion to open this up to the public.
Move to open ordinance 01-2018 to public discussion.
I'll second.
Is the railroad here for the presentation? Would it not be prudent to hear that first? I don't know.
I think I can do that during the public. We're going to do a...
Do you want them to go first, or do you want them to go after the other, all the public comment? It doesn't matter.
Do we need to take a vote for it first, or is this under discussion?
No, I think, no.
Public hearing first,
Public
and
hearing.
then council discussion.
So this is part of public hearing.
Okay. I'd like to do it here in public, the public part. Remember so call for the vote.
Is this a vote for public hearing?
Calling,
Just voted to go with public hearing.
calling for a vote. Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks?
Yes.
Peter Denmark?
Yes.
Monty Irvin?
Yes.
Victor Shen?
Yes.
And Dan Blair?
Yes. Paul, would you please come up and help us with this?
My name is Paul Farnsworth. I'm with Alaska Railroad. We're talking about the rezone this time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if I may, I have a map to hand out. This one here is incorrect as in lot 6 is shown as being industrial, and I understand that it is commercial. Other than that, it is took the map and we actually, on this one, we have listed some of the uses. I know that's been a question, what are we going to do with it? It's a little hard to speculate what the uses of this may be over time. And, once we have this rezoned and taken down to grade, we would expect it to be used for railroad activities for, decades and decades. And over that period, we would expect all of these things that we have listed that are according to our permitted uses to happen at one time. Sometimes while we're there, we left off a junkyard and left off airport. That didn't seem like it's applicable, but the rest of these uses we have listed here could be and may well be over the course of the lifetime of that property used for those industrial purposes. So I'm ready to answer any questions you may have.
One question on the plat that you gave us here. There's an orange line that's considered part of the uplands, even though it's in the saltwater. That there's ownership of the sea bottom proximal to the long dock, right?
So I'm going to ask Doug to come up and talk with us. He's our land guy.
And I know the answer to my own question, and the answer is yes. Okay.
Okay.
And my question is, it's my understanding that line is drawn on this map is a little bit in contention with the city's records.
The orange line around the DeLong dock.
On the north side of the long dock. It kind of goes to a curve around the, going towards the marginal wharf. And anyway, when the city draws that land line.
Could you point that out to me, please, sir?
Okay. I'm looking at this orange line right here on the north side of the long dock.
I'm with you.
Now, if you go to the city's map, that line is extended. We're talking about hundreds, 100 yards here, maybe 2, but there is an inconsistency in what those lines are.
That's the same map.
That's the city's.
Okay, so
Give it to Charlene. Charlene. There you go.
okay, so were we here to talk about the zoning? Or are we here to talk?
No, today is the first day that we've seen the map brought forward by the railroad. We've been working on city maps to this day. And that was one of the issues that was brought to my attention of a point that needs to be rectified, perhaps. And I'm asking if it is an issue that does need to be rectified.
Peter, we're going to have an opportunity to bring into public discussion the other ordinance, which is the essential terms. And that might be a better point to ask that, if you'd be willing to come up to that. But
right.
If I had a question and I said it.
Right. I know the parcel that you're talking about. We have some people here that can speak to it. I think that has been discussed at length. I am not the one to discuss that land ownership issue or exactly where that line is. I know it's been a subject of much correspondence between the attorneys and the city, so I suspect we've got some people that can speak to that.
So do we have any more questions for Mr. Farnham regarding the rezone?
So regarding the rezone and Tract A and the Tract W subplats, right, is what is topical at this moment. I don't want to overstep my bounds again.
Lots 3 and 5 are being considered for rezone?
Yes. Okay. My question, are those plats accurate as a function of the work done by Phil Johnson in the early 2000s with all the blasting that he did to try to fulfill an unfulfilled business plan?
Right, so Lot 6 is not part of the rezone request tonight, and that's the lot that was acquired from Phil Johnson. The lots 3, or one of the lots acquired from Phil Johnson, 3 and 5 are the ones that are up here now. I don't know about Mr. Johnson's business plan.
So, are the plats accurate? correction to this map?
Okay, this is ortho rectified, so we're putting a plat over a picture, which never works perfectly, but to the best of our knowledge, these are accurate lines on the map, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more public comment on this ordinance? Suzanne?
I know I've spoken on this before, you guys are probably tired of it, but I still hope that the council will think very, very hard about this, whether you approve it or not, because it is all part of the railroads, from my standpoint, it is all part of the railroad's plan to just keep taking over as much of what they can down there, regardless of the DeLong dock, but you guys need to get as much information out of the railroad as you can. They have not been very forthcoming and open about their plans, and I think the city needs to be on top of getting all of their plans, whether it's this year, next year, 5 years down the road. Get as much information out of them as you can before you go forward with the rezone and the other things, because the long-term ramifications for that end of town are huge if you don't keep on top of the railroad.
Thank you, Suzanne. Charlene?
I just have a couple of questions on the map. I wasn't aware that we had a Gilman subdivision plat. I don't believe that ever come before planning and zoning. I'll have to look that up because there's a plat number there, and it's a subdivision. That's concerning. The orange line at Blackstone, the parking lot and the building are separated. Is that, my question is, what does parking lot 2, who does that belong to?
That's city property.
That's city property, so that's why that is divided like that.
Yeah, the orange line is the demarcation between the city and the railroad properties. The orange line is the beginning of the railroad property. Oh.
Okay.
Whittier Manor leases Part 2 from the city for an annual fee. It is for our snow dump and for our summertime overflow parking. We own 15 feet, or is it 18 feet, out from the edge of our building. Whittier Manor has that. So technically, the railroad could come in and blast the hillside away in front of Bay 7, 8, and 9. Because we're on that cliff that juts out from there. It doesn't show on this map. That's why that orange line is going in from Blackstone, in between the end of Bay 10 and Part 2. Because the city owns Part 2.
And the DeLong dock and Lot 8, those are commercial and not industrial? It's kind of hard to decipher the difference from the colors.
The DeLong dock looks like it's designated industrial, and on the document that you've shown me in the past, all of Track W is indeed industrial. They're not, for some reason, they're not.
But the DeLong dock is commercial.
Well, the DeLong dock is on top of the land that is zoned industrial. I don't think there's a...
It's not on land, it's on tidelands. The tidelands could be industrial or, you know, commercial. From the ordinance that we passed on tidelands, I do believe that is commercial property, the tidelands.
Okay, I might have misunderstood, but I thought you pointed me to one where it showed all the track W as industrial.
The DeLong dock floats. It's not it's up and down. It's not on land. But that is just, I had never seen this map before, so it kind of clarifies a few things for me, but I was concerned about the parking lot too. And that would be, what would that be zoned?
The part 2?
Yeah.
I don't have a zoning map in front of me. My guess is it is multifamily residential.
Would that residential?
Multifamily.
Multi?
I'm guessing at this point, Charlene. I need to look at
Oh, it's okay. I mean, I'm just curious because I had never seen this before, so. That's.
Do you have anything to say as far as planning and zoning? I mean,
Pardon?
Do you have anything to say as far as planning and zoning's part in track 3 and 5? I mean, in 2014, planning and zoning approved this change from commercial to industrial.
Well, we improved it to be sent to you again. That is the same way that we approved it this last time, just to be sent for the final determination from this for the city council. Because we're not getting the information from the railroad to make it a solid vote for the planning and zoning. So we did send it again to the city council for their approval, and I had some city council members that actually asked me to table it, and I didn't think that was the proper thing to do. The proper thing to do is to be sure that it got before the public and got a hearing, and so people just don't come to planning and zoning, but they do come here. So it's more appropriate for the planning and zoning and something this important to send it to the city council for their final approval. And I do believe at that time it was tabled and wasn't taken back up again. So the only thing that I can say for planning and zoning is that when we determine, we make sure that it is something that works for the whole community, and not just because it's in the ordinance to be done doesn't mean that we have to automatically approve a petition. So, thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Paul, do you have any input with regard to the current zoning of Tract W? I thought it was all zoned industrial.
So we pulled up your zoning map, and I have to admit, by the time we blew it up big enough so we could see where the lines are at, I would not tell you absolutely that the DeLong dock is industrial. We just kind of picked it off as best we could, so we translated it. Go ahead.
My name is Doug Stevens. I'm the Land Services Manager at the Alaska Railroad. I'm a licensed land surveyor, and the existing zoning comes from compiled plans that have been part of your master plans, because I have yet to see an official City of Whittier zoning map, and if you show that to me, I would be happy to correct anything on this. Secondly, this doesn't really change anything, just so you know. This is intended to be an illustration showing lots 3 and 5 that we're asking to be rezoned, and the surrounding land is primarily industrial to the north. The other railroad land that we own, we're basically trying to consolidate our ownership under a single land use zone that's appropriate for what the railroad does, which is heavy industry. Regarding that Park 2, I'm pretty sure Park 2 is dedicated as a park on a prior subdivision, so I don't know, it's up to you guys, but I don't know that it matters a whole lot what it's zoned because it's dedicated as a park. The DeLong dock itself, the parcel is actually what the railroad owns at the moment by virtue of the deed from the Army Corps is the tide lands, the submerged lands, the uplands, and the dock. So I believe it's appropriate to zone it something. It's a discrete parcel of land, and again, from the compiled master plan, I believe it is currently zoned industrial. Any questions I can clarify there?
Thank you. Thank you. Suzanne?
I just have a quick question. Dwayne, a quick question. To the left of 3A, I'd like to know why Blackstone Road is shown as industrial. See where you've got Blackstone and Hill Street? Why is it showing that Blackstone and Hill Street are industrial? Or did they just not stop their lines? And then also this access easement, is that supposedly the extension of Blackstone Road? Where it says access easement, sort of running in front of 3. So questions on that?
That's an easement. I don't know if it's...
May I offer a quick explanation? The several small easements on Lot 3A, Lot 3, Lot 4, and 5 are existing easements on the City of Whittier subdivision plan. So there's an existing access easement and existing utility easements over those parcels on the existing subdivision plat. Regarding the zoning on Blackstone Road and Hill Street, I don't know that's really meaningful or relevant. Again, I would defer to whatever your official zoning map is to how Blackstone Road and Hill Street are actually zoned. We did our best with this in a hurry, so
that easement is almost certainly there's an underground tunnel there for a utilidor. That maybe that's what it is.
Which the one on 3A is not a utility easement; it's an access easement. That's what is dedicated on the plat. The others on 3, 4, and 5 are labeled 10-foot wide utility easements. Those are on the, I don't know, it's like the subdivision plat from 1977.
Thank you. Are there any more public?
Yes, please.
Okay.
When this matter came up and was discussed...
Could you state your name, please?
My name is Bill Lee. Okay. When this matter came up and was discussed several years ago, I believe it was 2014, we were discussing the rezoning and the reshuffling and transfer of land to the railroad. There was a commitment made in principle and with good intentions on the part, putatively, of the railroad and the City of Whittier that additional uses that Smitty's Cove has been traditionally used for over the scale of decades, which included recreational use for divers. It is a designated marine park. The use of kayakers, boaters, and also the use for landing craft to load on and offload cargo would be preserved.
We're going to have, you came to the right meeting.
Okay.
Next ordinance. The next ordinance is going to be about the essential terms, and one of the essential terms is public access, guaranteed public access to Smitty's Cove.
Okay,
so
that's encouraging because I would like, and I'll wait for that next issue, but briefly I would like to say here, based on this map that was hastily prepared by the railroad and the comments of the railroad representatives, it would appear that that commitment on the part of the railroad was fulsome. And that is discouraging, but we'll discuss it further at the next point. Thank you.
Please. Thanks for coming. Charlene?
I just looked up the tideland ordinance, and as far as I can see, and from my phone, is that we have recreational and commercial. I don't see an industrial on it. And as I can remember, when we passed it, that we also can bring, like anything else on our zoning, can come up for conditional use or a variance. So the DeLong Dock, the tidelands, and we can and did zone all tidelands, whether they were state, federal, or anything within our district as a city boundaries. We zoned. So it is in the ordinance on your tidelands, already zoned on the railroad and along the DeLong Dock.
It's zoned commercial?
Commercial, as far as I can see. All of that is commercial. The except for Smitty's Cove, which is recreational, and some of the plats at the head of the bay are also commercial, and some of them are recreational.
Very good. Thanks for that.
I'm sorry I don't have the map in front of me on the tidelands.
I learned a lot tonight. I will definitely have one next time.
But
thank you, Charlene. Okay, seeing no more public comment, I'd ask for a motion to take us out of public.
Move to close public hearing. Second.
Calling for a vote. Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Victor Shen?
Yes.
Peter Denmark?
Yes.
Monty Irvin?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks?
Yes.
And Dan Blair?
Yes. I'd ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance 01-2018. I'll second.
Discussion. Peter?
As I discussed in the meeting, for all the work that went in between the city and the railroad over the years to put this together, I still have some issues. And as pertains to the rezoning issues, I'm a little concerned about the accuracy of the plat lines. And since Mr. Lee brought it up, Smitty's, we've already got industrial zone property in Smitty's Cove. And so zoning more isn't really going to make that much difference, but I think going in that direction when we did initially was a mistake, because we do have an identified marine park in Smitty's Cove with property zoned as industrial offering, allowing the handling of hazardous materials 100 feet uphill from a marine park. So my point being, it's not a testament to long-term urban planning.
I think Whittier in itself kind of lends itself to that remark. Being started.
I'll bring it up again here before we're done.
question to that. Lot 6 is industrial? I thought it was commercial.
That's a mistake. It is commercial.
It is commercial, okay. And that is more appropriate to me because it is next to the launch ramp. So I will just comment that I actually went down and looked at this property, and you know, the railroad owns it, and that's what they do is industrial, and with, I don't know how, I remember how lot 4 got there, but I just don't see future use with the railroad owning it as in commercial. It doesn't, so if you get away from all the other stuff going away, it's just somewhat, other than losing some beauty, it's kind of common sense to me to make these industrial. It just fits the lay of the land, I guess, based on what is happening down there today. So I have concerns too, but you know that you do cover the potential uses when you list all the industrial zoning. And just for the record, if Zone 6 ever came up, I would be very likely to restrict several of those, like hazardous materials, from near Smitty's Cove, but maybe it'll just remain commercial.
See no more questions, ask for a vote.
Calling for a vote. Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks? Peter Denmark?
No.
Monty Irvin? Victor Shen?
I lost it. I missed down the last about 30 seconds right before this. Can you rerun that?
Oh, we're taking a vote.
Are we opening for council discussion?
No, this we're adopting Ordinance 01, 2018. The rezoning of lots 3 and 5.
Victor, did you have a question?
I don't think he heard the last one. I would ask him if he's ready. Are you ready to vote, Victor?
One second. No.
Is no the vote? Is no your vote? Victor?
Yeah, no.
So I'm going to mark you down as no.
Yes, no.
Thank you. And Dan Blair?
Yes. Okay, I'd ask for Madam Clerk to read the next ordinance.
Ordinance 08-2017, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the Alaska Railroad transferring Track A1 to the Alaska Railroad in exchange for Track W and the DeLong dock subject to specific essential terms and conditions executed by the parties.
I'd ask for a motion.
Move to open ordinance 08-2017 for public hearing.
I'll second. This is your opportunity, sir.
Did we vote?
Oh, wait, just, we still need a vote?
Yeah.
Right.
Did we get a second? Calling for a vote, Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks? Yes. Victor Shen?
Yes.
Peter Denmark?
Yes.
Monty Irvin?
Yes.
And Dan Blair?
Yes.
Okay, so just basically pick up where I left off. The use in the Space Code goes back probably over 5 decades. There's probably every diver in South Central Alaska that got certified in Alaska got certified there. There are at least 2 dive businesses in Anchorage that rely on that cove. It's the only easy access to open water diving in South Central Alaska. Lakes, I don't know if you've ever seen the bottom of lakes, there's not much to see there. There's tremendous life down there. There are at least 5 or 6 species of starfish, 6 or 7 species of nudibranchs. You've got 3 or 4 different species of soft coral. There are occasionally sea lions, sea otters in there. 3 or 4 different species of rockfish, juvenile lingcod. It's an area for many other species of juvenile fish. And it's a fairly unique piece of habitat in Prince William Sound, particularly in this area. And I've dove around in this area over by the Rookery, up at the headlands of the Passage Canal. There aren't really any places around here, and down on the further coast, down towards Shotgun and so on, that are as rich in life, actually, as that. It's amazing. So what the railroad's proposing to do, we've already established that it's a marine park, they're proposing to put an industrial area right in a marine park, okay? And in their map tonight, they clearly indicate that the recreational uses that have been customary and traditional in that area for decades are not compatible with their intentions for that parcel, not compatible for their intentions for that navigable waterway or those submerged lands. Now, that belies earlier commitments made by the railroad. And that raises a concern for all users of that parcel. And that's the one thing I really want to make clear tonight, that there are other interests there. And we're not necessarily large quasi-government corporations, but there are businesses that rely on it. There are individuals that rely on the value of that habitat. And there are species that rely on the value of that habitat. There are at least 2 research projects that are currently in there that look at the artificial reefs, and that was a NOAA research project. And there's a private citizen initiative as well that does regular monitoring. So those activities are there. They have been going on for several years. And the railroad right now, as I see it, based on this map and the comments of their representatives tonight, obviates their commitment. So I would like to see assurances, and I'm assuming that's what we're going to be talking about in this upcoming ordinance, that they will still adhere to those commitments. The language in your initial handout here, tonight on the agenda, Section 6 on Depot Road, talks about the unique legal status of that road as being a shared or mixed ownership road, both private and public. And you talk about an implied easement that would putatively be defended, at least according to this, through a lawsuit should that easement not be honored. Getting title to land or getting easements by things like implied easements or adverse possession to get an easement in gross is really a dubious way to do it, and it leads to a lot more difficulty. So I would suggest we get it in the plat and in the contract if we really want to preserve those uses. As far as industrial or commercial use necessarily being incompatible, I think the history of that cove and its uses for both prove it is compatible. We haven't had a major accident or problem because of the different uses, whether it's landing craft coming in, kayakers coming in, ships coming into the DeLong dock. We've all gotten along just fine down there, and I think there's no reason that it can't continue. But definitely, I was not concerned a week ago, and I think a lot of other people were not concerned a week ago. But the materials presented by the railroad and the comments of their representatives raised significant concerns, and so I'd like to see those raised and make sure that all the people that are decision makers are aware of that. and it's important. And one of the reasons we keep coming back, we were here in 2014, is we understand that priorities change. We understand that the decision makers change. And the only way other interests besides the large interest of the railroad are going to be heard is if we show up and we speak as well. So anyway, that's my piece. Go ahead.
We very much appreciate the divers. I think for the last 2, maybe 3 years, they've taken the time to come down and do some show and tell in our schools.
I'm one of those guys, yeah.
And it's just been fabulous. But could I just, I'm going to read you some excerpts from part of the essential terms. Subject to continuous, reasonable legal vehicular ramp and pedestrian access across Tract A to Smitty's Cove by general public and commercial users for general public and commercial purposes, which include but are not limited to commercial and recreational diving. Grantee covenants to provide such reasonable public access to Smitty's Cove following conveyance of property to grantee. So
that's encouraging.
We are conveying tract. This hearing is about conveying Tract A.
Correct.
For us receiving the DeLong dock. But in that conveyance of Tract A, I just read you part of the covenants that are in the deed. So they have to abide by that.
Okay, and they intend to sign that contract?
Both parties have agreed to the essential terms.
Okay. Yeah, and that is in substance what we have discussed in the past, and I think that's good. And I think the uses, I know on the face of it sounds like this could be a terribly incompatible situation, but history has shown that it can be compatible.
Yeah.
And the only caution I would say is that word reasonable is really a dangerous word in this world.
So there's one more piece. I can't remember. It's in our essential terms, and it's. I'd like to just read it. It's Alaska Railroad recognizes that Smitty's Cove is a popular recreational spot for scuba divers and Whittier visitors, and agrees to provide legal public vehicular ramp and pedestrian access to Smitty's Cove for public use. So, in the event that they build an alternate route, that route has to meet standards that we agree to as a community before the current route is given up. So we value Smitty's Cove, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you and other users for a long, long time.
Great, thank you. I'd also like to say, this is sort of a side note, but I'm also a climber. I haven't climbed lately, but there were conflicts between the climbing community and the railroad with right-of-way access, and some difficult things happened because people made some stupid decisions on the part of the climbers, and the railroad had a safety issue which was legitimate. But the climbing community did meet with the railroad and worked out a system where climbers could still access certain climbing sites, and just put in some parameters in place so it remained safe and doable for all parties involved. So the railroad has worked with other recreational users on different areas of their right-of-way, and I don't see any reason that the same can't be done here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Peter, you had some questions that were in the essential terms for the railroad. Did you want to ask those now? It was about the delineation of Tract W being different as drawn on this map versus...
Actually, I was talking about the submerged land lines north of the DeLong dock. That the city's map shows a different profile for of the line. The city's line is bigger than the railroad. It shows a bigger area than the railroad's map does here.
Our line went further west.
Oh, you're the one who pointed it out to me.
Yeah, it went further west.
Yes, yeah. And maybe north a little bit.
I think the railroad pointed out, though, that these lines aren't exactly to scale. They're superimposed over top of a picture, so.
But if somebody grabbed my city map, but just the profile of the line is different on the city map than it is on the railroad map.
Yep.
So that was my concern there. And then to follow up a previous comment about an alternative route to Smitty's Cove. Thank you very much. That's going to require, to create that alternative route, and this has not been discussed in any detail, but my understanding from previous conversations, that would be an extension of blasting some mountainside away and an extension of Blackstone Road into Smitty's Cove. Would be the alternate route.
That's not been my understanding. I believe.
Then what alternate routes might be under consideration?
May I?
Please.
Paul Barnes with Alaska Railroad once again. So we have looked at what this will look like after it's reprofiled. We actually have a mining plan that we've looked at on this, and based on the nearest that we could cut the slopes back to it, there could be a road that actually follows the kind of the hillside along the edge of Kittiwake Court. Whether or not that makes any sense is a long time in the future. It would be grade separated. It'd have to meet road profiles. You'd have to have crown, had to be protected from rocks falling down on it. So there's a lot of engineering that would have to go into any relocation. And I think that's why the agreement, in my opinion anyway, that says that they'll maintain access until we get another approved engineered access is kind of a good way to go. We're not just going to go in there and chop some trees down. We've got to get it approved. We've got to meet city standards, got to meet road standards, and it's got to be safe to move on. And that's quite a ways in the future after the cliff's been removed. And then, who knows what it's going to look like from then. The city may want the road someplace else by then.
So to be clear, to get to Smitty's, going by memory here, which is getting less and less, to get to Smitty's Court, or Kittiwake Court,
yeah,
is to traverse Shotgun Cove Road.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Now, where it took off from is once again kind of an engineering question where it goes. If you go all the way down to Depot Road, it's going to be hard to pick it up. And that's why one of the things we contemplate, this is really getting in the weeds now. We're talking about one of these days, perhaps maybe, if you keep that elevations on Blackstone coming up Hill Street, it allows you to get down to the dock a little easier and gives you some grade separation so you're not, going up and down so much. But that's way in the future. All we've done is said that we've acknowledged that we have got to maintain access, and we will, and before we can change that access, we've got to have a road approved by the city. So there isn't anything nefarious about this other than looking at options in the future.
During our discussion, I was led to believe that an alternate route would begin with Shotgun Cove Road, and then there would have to be some blasting to get you down to grade to get to an alternate route to Smitty's Cove.
So that way it could go also. You're going to start out 90 feet above the grade if you're on Shotgun Cove Road. So where it would take off is once again, that's an engineering function. If you start out 90 feet in the air, you can't get down to Smitty's Cove at less than a 6% grade without putting in switchbacks. That's why, and we're really out there, folks. Looking at it, it can stay right where it's at, or it can come off of Blackstone. Then you're only starting out 10 feet above, and you can keep that grade. If you go all the way up to Kittiwake Court, it's going to be steep trying to get people in and out of there. So, those are some of the things that you have to contemplate before you figure out where the road's going to go. If it goes, when it goes. All the above.
Thank you.
With city approval.
With city's permission.
Yes.
And their design standards.
Suzanne?
I still have concern. Now we're on this A1 thing. You've gone with your zoning thing. Now you're talking about this A1. And it I think it's just going to keep snowballing, and my concern is, where are they planning to put the road? I mean, they're kind of vague this, vague that. I mean, if they're going to try to use Shotgun Cove Road, they're going to have to use part of Blackstone, which now has tunnels and utilidors under it, is not for heavy equipment. I mean, are they going to try to run all their heavy equipment up and over and down, or is this just for the public and the tourists? Are they going to try to, they should have come to this meeting tonight with plans, if thinking that they were going to get these two ordinances approved. They should have come tonight with some really concrete plans on where they want to put roads. Because if you give them Tract A1, eventually you're going to have to come up with another road plan for the public to get to Smitty's or that whole area down there. And I don't know, some really grave concerns about it. And anyway, I just very concerned about the whole situation, and those of us living over there, how it's going to impact us. Does the railroad know that the lots on the south side of Blackstone Road are privately owned lots? Those are actually, even though they're on the hillside, those are privately owned lots. So it's not that they can just go up there and start blasting away and trying to, and I'm not talking about when you get down into here, which is where they're talking about blasting and all that stuff. But before you even get to there, you've got a lot of privately owned lots up there.
That sounds like something that the railroad's going to work with.
Well, something to think about.
Charlene, I had a question. Blackstone Road, I know Scott Corby would be the guy I would normally ask, but Blackstone Road is a city road, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so is Depot Road. 1993, all the roads, it isn't, were
I've been told otherwise.
It was, all the roads in Whittier in 1983 were deeded by the railroad to Whittier because they can get grants to pave the roads. It's in the 1989 comprehensive plan. The plan was in 1993 for the railroad to take back all the roads. And when I brought that to everybody's attention in 95, nobody could find the paperwork. So you consider that a city road access, or do you consider that belonging to the railroad?
My question was mainly for Blackstone.
Pardon?
Mine was mainly for Blackstone, because
Blackstone is a city road.
Thank you. Paul, did you have some more input?
That's fine.
I'm wrong?
No, you're correct. I don't have anything to add.
Good. Thank you.
Suzanne, I'm going to have to close this. Do we have any other public input? Okay.
Hi, my name's Ron Fancher. I'm with Dive Alaska, one of the two small businesses that rely on Smitty's Cove that Bill mentioned. Just between a little bit of the uncertainty with this plan, with how it's looked at with somewhat vague assurances, am I correct in assuming that during construction, recreational access to Smitty's Cove will be maintained, and that's been agreed upon by the city and the railroad?
Public access is to be maintained at all times.
At all times, even during construction, because I don't assume there's anything nefarious going on with the railroad, and I understand that as a recreational user of Smitty's Cove, we're definitely in the minority. But yeah, the assurance from the railroad and the city that recreational access is preserved is important, and hearing that from you guys is reassuring.
Thank you.
I would suggest that during blasting, they would have short closures for safety.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And this is off subject, but just a question. When you guys are diving, are you guys usually using the ramp or the side, off to the side of the ramp?
Definitely both. The ramp tends to be the safest. Off to the side, the rocks there are slippery and jagged, and that's how you end up doing paperwork.
Okay.
Did you fix that?
I mean, I wouldn't complain.
I just wanted to mention too that Parks and Rec also values Smitty's Cove quite a bit for the local residents here, so.
No, absolutely. I know you guys have a much more vested stake in it than I do, and I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to synthesize about 30, 40 years of history based off people on council and former representatives.
Yeah, so just so you know, you've got some local people here that are also pushing for access. More. That's right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other public comment?
One quick one.
Go ahead.
It seems like a lot of the consternation is really surrounding how the mechanism is that will preserve the access. And if I can make a suggestion, the simplest thing to do, rather than implying easements or anything like that, simply make sure it's in the documents of conveyance and it's annotated on the plat and dedicated on the plat. And once that's done, it's as close to carved in stone as anything's going to be. And it's the simplest and best way. I mean, I'm also a surveyor. I'm also an environmental engineer. So I understand a lot of these issues. So.
It isn't a quick clean deed, so.
Right, okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay, I'd ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Victor Shen?
Yes.
Monty Irvin?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks?
Yes.
And Dan Blair?
Yes. Yeah, ask for a motion.
Move to adopt ordinance 08-2017.
I'll second.
Discussion.
Bill, if I may share a few thoughts that I shared when we were in an executive session as well. The city's been working on this for a couple of years, and a lot of work has gone into this long back transfer. And the essence of it is being an economic engine for the city of Whittier, and it makes a lot of sense from that perspective. My disappointment is, as intense as the negotiations were between the city and the railroad to put this together, we haven't accomplished much here. It is my disappointment that we have been unable to do any long-range, long-term visioning with the railroad, our landlord in Whittier, over the course of my residency in Whittier. And anyway, it's been a great disappointment to me. I think that there's any number of evolutions that can come to the city of Whittier here. Our comprehensive plan is steeped in recreation and tourism, and we've got an industrial concern splitting the town right down the middle. So it's going to be an uneasy relationship with whatever goes on. It is not impossible 50 years down the road that the entire South Shore of Passage Canal will be docks, rails, cranes, all the way out to Emerald Cove, because we are the only ice-free port in South Central. So, and I'm the last person that wants to see that happen, but I've never heard it. It's certainly a possible outcome. And anyway, I've never been able to get a grip on the future needs of the railroad looking down the road. And that's the essence of my disappointment. I wanted to share that. And with all the work that's gone into the long dock, I do have a couple issues. My concerns with this are assumptions as to the condition of that dock before we take it over. We've had an appraisal, we had a study done for piling integrity, but there's been no facility surveying, and we're still arguing about a truck turnaround for it. And for a major industrial component of the city, not to be able to be granted access to turn its trucks around. I mean, it's a problem that's solvable, but it should this should have reached a little bit further and to make this right across the board. So there's some good work here, but it's coming up short. One of the fishing companies came to me the other day. I looked at the DeLong dock, and there's an expansion joint where the ramp meets the dock proper, and they're starting to separate there. It's the city's assumption that we might get 20 years out of this dock. I don't believe that that's true. There was a long lapse in cathodic protection on the dock under the railroad's management, which is supposedly fixed right now, but that goes to my concerns as well. So my essential survey, and then the integrity of the water line going on the dock too. I fear the city's going to be buying some maintenance headaches here that it is not aware of yet. And those are my concerns regarding this ordinance.
I guess I will speak up too. I share your concern, Peter, mostly, but I think everybody, I'm speaking for myself, I won't speak for council, but it's pretty clear we're buying a used car, not a new car. And there are risks inherent in that. But there are also, you have to, if this passes, but just so people know where I look at it, number one, I think that the seafood processors will benefit from operating with the city only rather than the city and the railroad. I mean, almost any company would rather operate with less government agencies. I think that'll be helpful. I also think that acquiring an entity that requires access could actually help the east side of town, because now we'll have Smitty's Cove, we'll have Whittier Manor, and we'll have the DeLong dock to deal with, where we're the owner. So I think access, the authority for access or the demand for access actually improves. So I think there's a benefit there. It also, you look at the value on paper, the trade of land, and a raw piece of land that's worth about $1 million versus a dock that's worth $7 million. It looks really good, $7 million to $1 million, but you're buying a piece of land's a lot easier to put something on and make something out of it than it is a dock that is old. But I think it also gives the city some control in their destiny a little more. I think there's a lot of advantages of it, but yes, it is a huge risk. And and many people have just expressed concerns about, there's a map that's on a 2011 map that has it has gates or closures on Depot Road. And we discussed that in executive session, and I can't remember what I said, but I wanted to add a stipulation to that would not be, what I don't want to happen is the railroad to come back and say, well, you saw that plan when you approved this. No, I totally disagree with that, and I want the stipulation directly that this will not be, it'll be added to the stipulations basically that this will not be an option. And if I can refer to our attorney, I can't remember exactly how we did that.
To the extent that, a lot of the conveyance documents do that in some ways now, but what we would do is I would advise you to amend the ordinance before you vote on the ordinance. Have a motion to amend the ordinance to require either a memorandum or I would just call it a conveyance document. We could figure out how best to do that. That preserves access to Depot Road and ensures it's not closed. So I would just do, that would cover it, and that would make sure that protection stays in place, or in the event that for some reason we could not get there with the railroad, which is not what I would anticipate, but if that happened, then the agreement would not be approved because that's a conditional amendment that you've added. So.
We have one more question. Is anybody else concerned about the difference between the platted submerged highlands north and west of the long dock other than me? Okay. I get it.
So I don't remember who made the motion, but.
You did.
So can I do that by friendly amendment since I wrote it? So I would ask to amend the motion to include protections for the closure of Depot Road, from the closure.
I would say via conveyance document.
Via conveyance. Right.
That is correct. Who does own those submerged lands right now? Land ceded from the federal government. The submerged lands go to the states. So does the state of Alaska still own those submerged lands?
They're part of the tidelands that would be, my understanding, is city property.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm concerned about the line that we may be giving away a chunk that we maybe don't want to.
Yeah, submerged lands generally go to the states. That is clearly navigable water. So does the state of Alaska own that land, or does the state of Alaska cede that land?
Again, Doug Stevens, I'm a land surveyor with the railroad. Don't entirely hold me to this, but I'm going on some recollection. But I believe, Holly, you might check this, that the state legislation, HB 320 or something, that sets this up, that says a railroad will get the long dock from the feds and then reconvey it to the city of Whittier. I think that's basically saying that when we convey you the long dock, the submerged lands, the tide lands, and the uplands, that's what you're getting. That's not a state interest anymore. The city of Whittier will end up owning, whatever that line is on the drawing, the submerged lands, the uplands, and the tide lands. That's basically a done deal. I don't think the state's going to come. The state legislature approved that language. I don't think they're going to come back and change it, although all that.
One thing I would add, though, it's important to keep in mind, there's a public trust doctrine that attaches to all tide lands, at least. There's a public trust doctrine that attaches to all tide lands, so at least yes, that's correct. So it would go to the city, but that also protects access, and because that is a statutory mandate across the board, regardless of ownership. And that's also the city's code as well.
Okay, did the second agree with the change?
Yes. I would question it, though. Should we vote on that separate? Yes. We're voting for the amendment first and for the original.
Clarification on that amendment. Could you restate the amendment that you're suggesting that they have is to keep Depot Road open? Is that correct?
It's to ensure that Depot Road is not closed, via a conveyance document, so that it's included in the documents. And I mean, the railroad might want to speak to that, just so that you know where they stand.
We do have an attorney here, but we don't let him up in front of people if we can help it. So, as I understand the deal, we have these conditions precedent to closing, and they have been mutually agreed to. If you change one of those, we'll have to go back to the board of directors. We're going to have to go back and, consider whether or not that is material to the deal, because you're adding something after all these years of negotiation. I don't want to tell you how to run this, but if you're looking for closing in the near future, that may well impact it, because our board meetings are already set and we don't have another one till fall. So,
just to be clear, the legal position of the city has not approved officially the essential terms because it has to go before council. Right. And the non-essential terms, which one could argue the road access to Depot Road, which the railroad has assured the city that it would remain open. I don't think that you guys have represented at all that you plan to close that road. So I think our position would be that's a non-essential term, but also that the essential terms are here tonight by ordinance subject to adoption. So while you should most definitely, take note of the timing issues, it is well within the council's purview and their good faith exercise of this agreement and the ordinance to place additional conditions on their approval if that's what they choose to do.
I did not say they couldn't do it. I just
want them to be sure, that they understand what the parameters are, because I certainly want them to stay within their authority. Right. I mean, and that's another reason why it's a non-essential term, because you have land use powers that remain with the city. So I'm not sure that when I look at the agreement and I look at the parameters, I don't see that as being something that would, one, be essential because of the other authority of the city, but if it gives the council a feeling of permanence or a clarity to have that in there, then then that is something I think that you can condition upon. Of course, the railroad can always say no, and that will have significant impacts potentially on the deal. It might fail.
If that can't be done without, excuse me, if that can't be done without city approval, then adding it is probably unnecessary. But by the same token, if we add it, it can be undone. So I will withdraw it.
Second.
I agree. Withdraw.
Call for the vote.
Dave Pinkish?
Yes.
Dave Dixon?
Yes.
Deborah Hicks? Yes. Victor Shen?
Yes.
Peter Denmark? Monty Irvin? Dan Blair?
Yes.
The ordinance passes 6-1.
Okay. So we're skipping past the next ordinance because it's no longer going to be used. Moving on to new business. We need to set a new date for our regular meeting for the month of May.
So I'm actually requesting that we consider a different date for the May meeting because my daughter is graduating from high school on May 15th, and I would really like to attend.
The meeting or the graduation?
Definitely the graduation. any date, really, other than the 14th or 15th in May, I'm available.
I have to remind you guys that on the 15th, though, there is the Board of Equalization meeting that does require a council quorum.
And we're trying to see if there are no... So basically, we're working with Diana to make sure that there are no appeals. If there are no appeals, we can go ahead and cancel that meeting as well. So we're in the process of figuring that out.
We'll have answers by the 10th of May.
Do we have any suggestions for the regular meeting as far as dates? It works for me.
I can't be to them, but that's all right. But what about the following day, the 16th?
The 16th
I have to work.
That's where you have to work.
What about the 21st?
I won't be here. I won't be here from the 20th to 25th, but...
Yeah, I think it has to stay once it's already posted. So it's normally right before the council meetings.
Yeah.
And so because this council meeting was scheduled for the 15th of May, the board, yeah, so it was already, it went out, and the postings for that hearing.
Always somebody that puts one of those things. Unbelievable.
It's
What was that, Victor?
I'm sorry, I didn't get why we had, what was it that we had to adjust our meeting date?
So Victor, my daughter is graduating high school on Tuesday, May 15th, and I will not be able to attend the meeting. I don't have to attend. Do I have to attend the meeting? Maybe that would be easier for me to... No? Okay.
No way you can change to do the Wednesday, the 16th?
No, I can do the following Wednesday, the 23rd, 22nd, 21st, 2nd, or 3rd.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to delay the meeting 1 week to May 22nd at 7 o'clock.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Ooh. Calling for a vote. Dave Dixon.
Yes.
Victor Shen. Peter Denmark.
Yes.
Monty Irvin.
Yes.
Deborah Hicks. Yes. Dave Pinkish.
Yeah.
And Dan Blair.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, our next order of business is comprehensive plan summer sessions.
So on that, I needed to get council feedback. I've been working with Kitty Farnham with the Alaska Humanities Forum, and we were trying to figure out a way to capture input from our annual residents. And summer season is upon us, and the comprehensive plan is already a year behind schedule. So I just really wanted to figure out whether or not we should go ahead and attempt to find ways of capturing capturing feedback during the summer, or is this something that would be better delayed until the fall? And for that, I felt it would be wise. Yes, sir.
Historically, if we're looking for local participation, I think you'll get a better turnout, and after middle of September, even after Labor Day, you're probably fine. But you'll get a better turnout later.
I thought so as well, but because we're behind, I didn't want to make the decision without having council weigh in on it.
So, there are some things that we might be able to do as far as fact gathering.
Right.
You and I spoke about this. Is essentially, comprehensive plan is a vision, and what I was hoping that during this the time frame between now and Labor Day, so to speak, to try and gather sort of economically where we are as like a map of you are here type thing, and that way we have a good basis of where we want to go.
Sorry, I can go ahead and do that. Again, my big concern is I very much value community input, and so trying to capture that would delay the process. It's a delay well worth taking into account, and it does open up time to get that signpost of where we are. And I can certainly do that over the summer, no problem. Thank you.
Very good. So council discussion. One item, Tom Wagner called me, and he's trying to come up with some ways to do a summer cleanup with regard to some of the boats that no longer float, but they're on our land here, on private land. They've been damaged from snow and things like that. They'll never see water again. And you know, he was looking for basically the railroad's going to be participating, and maybe some help from the city. The idea is to get basically these derelict boats cleaned up and moved out. And so to have that happen, vision-wise, it would take, you know, essentially these derelict boats, they have to have the fuel tank removed, they have to have the engine removed. Once that happened, then the railroad and or the city could take these things and put them into dumpster gondolas. And so the part that's interesting is I would love to see it happen. The history as to why they were there, you know, I think at one, you know, people's plans change. They see these beautiful boats and they're parked on the beach, and before you know it, winter comes, and you know, you get 500 inches of snow, and all of a sudden it's not a boat. And then these people leave town, and so the landowner is left with this something that they're not allowed to burn because it's fiberglass. And anyway, I was just wondering if there might be interest from council to help with some of the funding as far as getting these boats ready to be disposed of.
Are there any grants that we could get or apply for that might help out with that?
This is the first I'm hearing of it, so we can certainly look into it, no problem.
One thing I'll just, sorry, throw in is that there's a new legislation, a Senate bill out there that will, that addresses derelict vessels and rewrites Title 39 for the state that deals with the impoundment of these vessels. The city has an impoundment process, like Peter says, and you can also do an auction to recover costs if that's at all viable. There's also, which Parks and Rec might be interested in looking at, there's an artificial reef project that some people have taken where they sink the vessels in accordance with, of course, authorities or people who can help ensure that that's done properly, but they create reefs that are, so that's somewhat out there, but the point is there is a lot out on this issue right now. There's a lot of movement, so it would behoove you all to pull those documents, and you have a nuisance abatement manual, so I would look at that as well.
I didn't miss a couple meetings, but I did a couple meetings telephonic, and couldn't hear very well. Whatever happened to our garbage truck?
Yeah, there you go. It's just what I was going to ask.
Did we buy it?
We did not buy it. My understanding from Mark Lynch is that he went to go get the truck and there was an issue with title, so no money was exchanged, and the holders of the vehicle were attempting to get title, but then we're in transition, so I haven't contacted them, so we're nowhere with that.
We should still pursue that though, right?
I don't know about that. I was just thinking if you cut them up enough, the city can at least haul them for free is what I was thinking, but if we don't have the truck yet, but I don't have an answer for if we should pursue it.
I think the railroad was going to haul, but they were looking for some help, either with equipment. I pointed out the problem with the contamination, and so that's, anyway, I just thought I'd bring it up. So this is all new to Annie, and maybe we could get some costs as far as what it would cost, or maybe if someone would be interested in bidding on it and bring it for May meeting. As far as if there's...
Yeah, and so we're disposing of gasoline fluids that are in the vessels that need to be disposed of. The railroad doesn't want them. That's the whole point of taking that stuff out. And we have to dispose of them in another fashion.
Well, I'm not sure what happens to the fuel tank and to the engine. There may be a market for old engines, but and there might be a market for old fuel tanks. I think the fuel tank, I assumed that it was empty, because at $3 a gallon, why would you have fuel sitting around? But and the landowner, anyway. What they were proposing is that the bulk of the boat would be hauled off. We would downsize our garbage problem.
Yeah, but we're left.
The harbor does have a process for that, though. I mean, if it wasn't a huge amount, they do have waste oil and disposal stuff, so it wouldn't overwhelm the harbor to aid in that, since it is boats. Sorry, Kyle.
So the idea being, if you have a professional that's competent to remove that stuff, they would probably be willing to. They would know what the next step is. I have no idea what you do with an old engine and an old fuel tank. So, I can't hear you guys, but is there anything else for council discussion? Open it up for citizen discussion. Charlene?
I just had a thought on the condition of the DeLong dock. You might get a hold of storm chasers out of Seward. In 2000, they did a survey of it, and the breakwater in the harbor. So they may still have that report. I don't know what happened to the report, but in 2000 they did do a valuation of the DeLong dock.
Thank you.
Farnsworth, once again, I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. I know we got some final details to wrap up, but this has been years of effort on our part and on yours, so thank you much. I wish you well with the DeLong dock.
Thank you, Paul.
Got a little trip hazard here you want to work on.
I can't see it, but
I'll move it because all of a sudden something would be unhooked and we'd be without power. Okay, I'm Karen Dempster. I first of all want to congratulate all of you that you did the right thing in not renewing the former city manager's contract. I know that was tough, but it was very necessary, and the citizens look to you to be able to do the job for us. And one of the things that I was a little concerned about, but you also did an excellent job of trying to bring in a good mentor for Annie with Don Moore. This is a seasoned person who can train somebody not to follow the path of the old city manager, to strike out new, learn how to do things. I think she's probably a good prospect, but she's not ready for prime time right now. She needs a good mentor. What she's learning, remember when the city manager's wife wrote in Facebook that he, the city manager, was dealing with uninformed, ignorant council members. He just shot himself in the foot. That is his job, to make sure that you are informed at all times so that you can make good decisions for us. You can't do that if you can't trust your city manager to give you the information in a timely manner so that you can absorb it and then make the decisions that we've elected you to make. I was very disappointed. I was having dinner with Ken Hunt at the Inn at Whittier just before your last meeting, and I was sitting facing the table with Don Moore and his wife. Ken was facing me, I was facing the table, and your attorney was working hard as she could with Don Moore that Annie knew what she was doing and he didn't need to be stepping in. I find this reprehensible for several reasons, and I'm going to bring up why I think you need a new law firm. Number one, she's here to advise you. You may accept the advice or you may reject the advice. She is not here to undermine the work that you've put in progress, nor is she here to tell you that you have to get in line or toe the line, because that is not her job, and it's not any legal counsel's job. Annie, I was disappointed in. She and Anna were standing at the end of our table having a discussion how they got this all nailed. They didn't know who I was, and I don't think that Ken Hunt meant anything to them either. But you've got to have people you can trust. I was disappointed in the last meeting where you had issues to bring up, that's why we have this meeting, and you had not been informed. That's the first job of the city manager, is to provide you with good information so you can make make the decisions we need to have made for our city. And unless you can trust that person to do that, and they've been trained by somebody that understands how to do this correctly, it's not going to happen. And I think you're going to lose somebody that might have good potential, but she actually undermined your effort to help her become a good city manager. The other thing that I've had specifically with this law firm, we had a personal injury lawsuit. And when you have a personal injury lawsuit, it's black letter law. You turn over your medical records immediately. Your city attorney did not let our medical people give us the records. Then we had a problem where we dismissed her firm because they were in conflict of interest. They didn't seem to understand that. We went to the Bar Association. The bar understood it and told them that they were not acting correctly and that they could not represent this person. Now, good law firms don't have these kinds of problems, and people that you're going to trust don't make these kinds of mistakes. This is black letter law. It's not something that I'm listening to some of the things on the C and other things, I haven't got a clue. I'd have to be back in the law books to bone up. But this is not something you should need to bone up on. You can't have people working against you when you're trying to set up a goal and a place to go. You can't have people undermining you. This is your city council. You make the decisions for us. We elected you. We didn't elect other people. You appoint them so that we can get good service. The other thing on this issue is I'm tired of asking the question about this money gold mine down the road here, the parking lot for cars for which Mr. Barnett got a honey of a deal. He cannot have that kind of thing. He was a fiduciary. I would like a copy of that contract. I guarantee I'll be able to break it. I will take it to court. I know how to do it. It's not going to cost me a penny. And I have standing, and we'll get that contract broken. That money should be coming to the city. There's no reason for this to be going on down here and that money siphoned away. And we're talking about a lot of money that is not coming into the coffers. You could probably do a lot of fun things if you had it. My final concern is public safety. We don't have a police chief. We need a police chief. Girdwood and Whittier, $667,000 for that contract, and we really would, it's good for both communities to keep that contract because our off-season is the winter, their off-season is the summer, and we have people, we don't have to train officers over and over again, lose them when we go to the off-season. It's a really wonderful deal. I wrote about this in the newspaper some time ago. But we need to keep that contract. The other thing is the tunnel contract is due tomorrow, May 1st. $70,000. Has that been done? Okay. No police, again, back to no police chief yet. We had last month, we had a fire, an overstuffed chair, a person who has now been fired by the company they were working for. And we called 911. It was 1:30 in the morning. The chair had been placed right in front of our handicap parking, and there was no response. Nobody answered the phone. Our people took care of the fire, and then we billed the company that this person was employed with for the replacement of our fire hydrants and the call out. The last thing I want to talk to you about is absolutely essential. That's called due process. We just kicked out somebody from our building after we had a due process meeting. We told him what the concerns were. We knew what they were. We were documented. And if you don't do that, you're very, very wrong. As a principal and a superintendent, if I wanted to kick a youngster out for a 2-day suspension, 3-day suspension, you do due process. Anytime you deny somebody something like their job, you have to have a due process meeting. And I'm going to tell you what I learned from a principal many, many years ago. I was just a young thing. I was the intern. We had another assistant principal looking out a window, 4,000 students to school. We had to have 3 lunch periods. It was absolutely essential that you don't let your kids out except when the bell tells you to, and they have to be back in. He's looking out the window and he's seeing the teacher come out of the building 5 minutes before the bell with his roll book. The kids go out. He watched it for a year. I'm getting to my point. He watched it for a year, for a week. He came down, told the principal. The principal said, "You know nothing until you ask the question. You have no idea what's really happening until you ask the question." So in we brought the teacher, and as it turns out, this was his computer lab class. He had to bring the students across to the lab in the main building, and if he didn't bring them 5 minutes early, he would lose them in the lunch shuffle. So here's the assistant principal watching this. He knows the guy's doing wrong, but until you ask the question, you don't know. And I think your former police chief, we've hired. He's, I think, a happy camper with us. But I feel that if anybody should say anything, you don't know anything till you ask him what happened. And the fact that he was denied that is absolutely wrong. Everybody gets due process when something is taken. I believe you still owe him his disability and his retirement, and that needs to happen. So,
thank you, Karen.
In closing, I want to ask again for the contract. If I can get a copy of the contract, don't tell me FOIA. The last time I filled out a FOIA request, it never was answered. So I'm doing it here. I want that contract, please, and I will take care of it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay. Seeing no further, yep, yes, sir.
Doug Stevens with the railroad. Keep in mind, I'm kind of a middle manager there. I'm not the decision makers, but personally, I see what we've done tonight is kind of a win-win for the railroad and for the city of Whittier. There are concerns, both sides. It's not going to resolve all of our conflict, but I think it demonstrated, a willingness to work together to try to work some of these out. Trust is built by trustworthy behavior. I think we both sides worked hard at establishing a little bit of that. And, you talked about like visioning to see what your plans are and what our plans are. Maybe we can use this as a springboard for more collaboration. I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment? Oh, okay.
As to your issue with your derelicts in town, your council brought up the idea of reefing them. It's actually a good idea, and Alaska has not really gotten into reefing wrecks. There's a fair bit of work that goes into cleaning them up. There was some talk about reefing the old fishing boat, the Tradition, that capsized a few years back, but quite frankly, that's a big tall order to reef something that big. But smaller boats are probably a little bit easier to reef. Down in that cove right now, there's an old Piper plane. There's a crane, a 50-ton crane that used to be up on the dock. There's a 3,000-gallon fuel tank. There's untold numbers of twisted railroad tracks and girders, and it's all become habitat. Millions and millions of calcareous species living on it, sponges living on it. In the covered and concealed places, there are places where fish come and lay eggs, and there's a lot of growth happening down there because there's so much rubble down there that has effectively become artificial reef. Other states have done it on larger and smaller scales, and it's been quite successful from a habitat point of view and also from a tourism point of view. You have large wrecks down places like Florida. There's an aircraft carrier sunk off the coast of Pensacola, Oriskany. There's a landing ship sunk off of Key Largo. So it's a thing to do on a smaller scale up here, and like I said, it would be somewhat novel here in Alaska. So thank you. Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Aren't there also some man-made concrete
yes.
pieces specifically made for like spheres with holes in them, stuff like that?
Correct. Yeah, there's spheres down there, and there is a set of pyramids, different shapes made out of concrete. they've been there now quite a number of years when they had to do some habitat restoration. And they've been monitored on and off by NOAA and various graduate students from like Alaska Pacific. Interestingly enough, they're not forming as much of a substrate as some of the other stuff that's there, which has granted been there longer. There's a fair bit of ink spilled in the environmental literature as to what makes the best substrates for artificial reefs. For example, Florida went hog wild into tires, and after a number of years they found out, this was back in the 70s, they found out tires didn't work so well. So now they're pulling tires out. But boats, barges, they do actually seem to work well. Concrete intuitively would seem to work well because of the hydroxyapatite matrix. But yeah, so they're there, and they have become some habitat. The wreckage, granted it's been there longer, but the wreckage is actually pretty remarkable habitat.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Suzanne?
Quick clarification. Mr. Farnsworth left, so he's not here to speak, but one of you guys suggested an amendment to, before you took your vote on the DeLong dock, was it you that suggested that, making an amendment to protect Depot Road, and then you spoke to that also. And then Farnsworth gets up here and says, well, the whole deal on the DeLong dock is off if you vote for this amendment. So did you guys panic and rescind your amendment, or do you feel that you can believe them when they say they will not close Depot Road? Because I have a direct quote from him. I wrote it down as he said it at your last meeting. No current plans for closing Depot Road. That does not preclude future plans, and we need something concrete.
What is
legally concrete to keep that road open?
In the discussion, and this is something that happens all the time. It could delay it, but it can't happen without city approval. So we could have made it hard and fast, but a future council could undo it anyway. So
Correct.
It's going to be up to the council at the time, but they can't do it without the city's blessing. So that's why I rescinded the amendment based on that. Just like the road, they can't make us, they can't make Subaru Alley down into the drink without city approval. So it will be up to future councils whether or not Depot Road ever closes. I suspect it won't, but it was.
You can hope.
It's somewhat. It was what we discussed in executive session, but after hearing that we have to approve it anyway, it doesn't matter if it's in there or not. The count.
It also making things more complicated.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I do want to thank Holly for the input on this and what you put in this document, and then also for what you said tonight regarding Depot Road. So thank you on that.
I'll just say I have no intent of allowing them to close Depot Road, but when it gets to that, I will not be on the council.
Charlene?
Just quickly, there are state statutes and municipal codes that have to be followed before you can close any street or alleys in our community. So there is a big process you have to go through in order to do that. And not just the council saying that they can do it. It has to come before the public.
Candace, one thing that came up today is the possibility of a restricted use road. If they possibly made an alternative route for recreational, that maybe commercial, industrial, and locals could use the road too. There's a potential of partially restricting it. In other words, hopefully the community would have the smarts to not pull out in front of a loader, whereas somebody with a towing a boat might not. So, but I don't see that. I don't see this happening for a long time, and I don't see it happening at all, really.
Do we have any more public comment? Hearing none, yes.
Second.